Chat with Nobody Else's Auto. We're here with our friend Jim Wicks today. We've had Jim in some other videos in the past. He is the Ford expert. If I've got a question about Ford, this is the guy I call because he knows about all of it. Especially Mustangs and Shelbys. This guy knows the history, the facts, everything about Shelbys, Cobras, Mustangs, all that stuff. So we're here with him today. We're at Meekum, Indy on a really special day. A good friend of yours is selling his whole collection, basically.
Yes.
Of some extensive shells, some very important shells. So, what do you know about the collection and things like that, as far as what we're going to look at today?
Probably the finest collection of Shelby American vehicles and memorabilia in the world, without a doubt.
That's saying something. There's a lot of guys that collect these.
He was based in Seattle, Washington, and he had all of this set up in the museum that basically anybody could come and see. It wasn't necessarily open to the public every day, but if you would call, he would make arrangements for you to be able to come in and look at it. He was a very sharing and caring person and wanted to promote these cars in their best light in history and make sure that all of the accolades that they so well deserved were offered and shared with everyone.
And celebrated. For what they did.
Yes.
So we're going to look at some of these cars today. You're going to show us around some of them. You're going to give us a lot of details about the cars themselves. But what's really great about Jim and Jim's knowledge, especially in the Shelby world, a lot of these cars in general, but especially the cars here, you have an in-depth knowledge of besides the Shelby facts. A lot of people know how many were built, when they were built, how they were auctioned, when they were raced. You know the rest of the story to a lot of these cars about when they were found later on, the restorations, tracing down the right parts, tracing down this, chasing down that, to make sure these cars were right, especially this collection. So lots of exciting things coming there. And I guess we just will start off with the top dog here on this one.
Well, I've been very blessed to do what I do and get to meet the people that I've met doing this. I first saw this car in the late 80s when they brought it, when it was brought out of Mexico. I saw it at the first event, literally the day after they brought it out of Mexico to bring it home to.
So this car was a lost car?
Yes, it was. It was history of the car, as being a factory team car, the development of the car for Shelby American. As years go by, and in Carroll Shelby's analogy of things, there's nothing more useless than yesterday's race car. You've got to go on to bigger and better things. This car got sold after the '66 season to a privateer racer who was a Ford engineer by the name of Bill Clausen up in Michigan.
So the car, before we go any further, probably let's tell them what we're talking about. Let's not lose it and keep rolling. Because we know what we're talking about. We've been looking at it.
This is 5R002, the most significant Mustang of all.
This was a 65.
This is a 1965 fastback Mustang delivered to Shelby American to be converted to a GT350 race car. That was its intent from day one.
When it was delivered to Shelby,
Ford, it was going to be a race car. Yes. It's a short common story that Lee Iacocca developed the Mustang, put the Mustang out there, the Mustang broke all the sales records, but it truly didn't have a performance image. So the natural thing at Ford was to, let's go to Carroll Shelby. He's the guy that's making his name with the Cobra image, and let him see what he can do to make the Mustang into a more sports appealing automobile. And that was the goal for this car.
Instead of just being cute and fun, let's put some teeth into it.
Yeah, let's make it into a true performance automobile. This car had to go win races, pure and simple. All the eggs were in one basket. If this car was not a success, all the rest of the Shelby Mustangs, and probably a lot of the other performance Mustangs, would have never happened.
There wouldn't be new Shelbys on Ford showrooms today.
There sure wouldn't be new Shelbys on showrooms today. This car went out and at its very first race was a winner. with Ken Miles behind the wheel, which that story has been, the Ken Miles story has come out lately in the Ford versus Ferrari movie. Right. Ken Miles was the everything hands-on guy at Shelby American, helping to develop race cars.
And he actually raced this car.
And he helped develop it and raced it. Raced it for their very first race. From there, it went on to in the hands of Jerry Titus, who won the national championship in 1965. And again, the years go by. This car wins the championship. GT350 wins the championship, which was the next car developed after this one, because this was the mule car. By the time you were at getting close to the end of the SCCA season in '65, this car probably had over 300,000 miles on it because of all the testing and everything that they did to bring something new into the performance sports car Mustang world. It was tested on this car.
Went on this car, and then they beat on it.
And then they ran it. They beat it.
So they weren't easy miles.
They went out and they won races with several different drivers. And '66 season, it was kind of a relegated backup car. And so when that season was over, again, it was sold to the guy in the Ford in Detroit. And he raced around the upper Midwest, won a few races with him. Time went on, and he got another car. This car was sold to some guys in Texas who took it down to the Austin, Texas area. And they were very successful with it. They won the Southwest Division Championship with it in '68 and '69.
Oh, wow. And so it was still successful even a few years after that.
Yes. And at that point, their changes in life went on, and they didn't race it in the '70 season, and decided to put it up for sale. And a fellow out of Mexico answered the ad.
And the car went south of
the border, as so many road race cars of this era did, because they were still competitive down there. There were series that they could run. So all of this.
So they were outdated here, but still very competitive throughout the '70s down there. So
throughout down there. So car went down there, won some races, and then was put up. Vanished. And it was put up in a lean-to in almost a salvage yard effect. There was rumor that the car was down there. They knew there were several other race cars down there. A couple of guys set on a journey to find this car.
So the car went to Mexico in the early '70s, disappeared, and then these guys say, we think this car's out there. When did it about
this
that?
This was in the '80s.
Like the mid-'80s?
This was in the mid-'80s, yes.
So the mid-'80s, so the two guys went on a mission to try to find this car.
Yes, one in particular went down there.
And all they knew is it went last known, it was sold to a racer in Mexico.
So they went to the old racers and hey, do you remember an old Mustang race car? One thing led to another, and pretty soon they were finding other Mustang road race cars. They found other competitive cars in that era. They found Penske Camaros. They found some of the Javelins that ran.
Oh, yeah.
Javelins. They found some of the Mopars, the AAR Cudas and TA Challengers that were produced. You know, a lot of the questions that they answered didn't get fulfilled, but they found something, and they usually bought those cars and brought them home and made a little money. You know,
is that what funded the search?
It continued to fund the search.
So it literally was a mission, and they would find an old race car, be it a Cuda, a Camaro, or another
one
Mustang.
One would lead to another, and
bring
just
it
hoping
back.
that it was going to be this car one of these days. And eventually it was.
How long did it take them, do you think, to find
this was a 3 or 4 year quest.
3 or 4 year quest?
Yes.
Throughout this process.
Between when they started making phone calls and they started meeting people and actually going down there and bringing those cars back.
Wow.
And bringing those cars back was no easy feat, because often they didn't have titles. Some of the stories about coming across the border and
were interesting, I'm sure.
Driving the federales and to get things done were very interesting. But eventually they got a call from somebody that said they thought that they knew of a Mustang race car around the Monterrey, Mexico area.
they did find it.
They did find it.
And was the car readily for sale when they found the car, or
It was, I'll think about it. And it was, how much money do you want to talk about? And so they finally got together on a price.
so the gentleman knew what he had.
Yes.
He knew the car was special, and it wasn't on the open market for sale.
Well, no, it was not on the open market for sale. And anyway, those guys brought it back,
And you saw it the day it came back.
literally the day after it came back, there was a Shelby event in the San Antonio area that I was down there participating in. And those guys knew that was going on, and so they made an appearance with the car on a two-wheel trailer. And the car's in gray primer. It looks like it just came out of a salvage yard. And
What year was that?
Roughly, I'm going to say 88.
About 88,
Somewhere in there.
Which they started in the mid 80s, and it was a 3 or 4 year project, so somewhere around 87,
Yeah.
89, when the car was finally discovered, purchased, and brought back to the States.
Yeah.
Now, was the car basically intact when it was
The
found?
car, the yellow motor that you see over there was sitting in it.
Okay.
And was somewhat apart, and completely all the body panels were on it.
Okay. So it looked like an intact
It looked like
car.
an intact car. And they had, basically, it was like they took gray primer to help hide the car. Because they sprayed the car, the entire car with gray primer. With no regard to
Trim and
being
everything.
overspray, trim, everything. There was gray primer on the steering wheel. It was obviously an attempt to hide the car.
They didn't want to look like they had a race car stand.
Didn't want to look like they had, yes. Yes, so that was, probably something to do with taxes
Oh, yeah.
of value down there.
Right. I would imagine so.
Anyway, that car, those guys had the car, they found some other significant cars. One partner bought out the other car sack, and eventually ended up in a big buyout deal with the guys that own the Shelby American Collection in Boulder, Colorado. They have a wonderful collection of significant Oakland GT3 race cars that would love for everybody to go see. It's in Boulder, Colorado. It's open on Saturdays only.
So if you're a Ford guy or any sort of racing or car aficionado, and you're in the
want to
Boulder
go.
area, you definitely want to check that out.
The Shelby American Collection.
Shelby American Collection in Boulder. They're open on Saturdays.
Saturdays only. Anyway, this car was in there, and they were wanting to do some different things, so there was a thought that they might swap some things around. And John heard that the car possibly could be for sale. So he had a conversation with the fellow that owned the car. The next thing I know, I'm getting a call from him. Let's go look. Looked at the car, determined, at least in my eyes, that it's what it's supposed to be. And he bought the car, and anyway, when he got the car, then it was a scratch your head question of, what do I do now? There were people that didn't want to see the car restored. They just wanted to see it left as it was found, to be part of that history. So John's a very astute guy, and so he got together with the people that actually helped build this car.
Back when it was built in '65 as a race car from the factory.
Yes. And he got a hold of the guys that were at Shelby with Pete Rock, Jerry Schwartz, Bernie Crutchman, those guys. He took the car to Quail in Monterey for a show to debut it out there.
In the as found condition.
The as found condition, with the question being continually asked, what needs to be done now? And he asked those guys right up front, and he goes, I own the car, but this car's your car. What do you want to see done? and they all said they wanted to see it brought back to its former glory. So this car being a test mule and with many stories, it has its own history, literally sometimes week to week.
Right.
Where do you have to take a time and place to restore it? What do you do?
And that's true, because like you said, they literally bolted different parts on it every week.
The car changed every week. So it was decided to take it back to the day that it was first raced, which was Valentine's Day weekend, 1965. And part of the headline read, Carroll Shelby stages Valentine's Day Massacre of the Corvettes at Green Valley Raceway in Dallas, Texas.
It was that ugly for everybody else there.
So at that point, Ford Motor Company got the advertising boost they wanted.
Right.
Pure and simple. That was a headline that you couldn't pay money for.
No, you couldn't spend enough.
You couldn't
marketing
spend
budget to get that.
enough money to get that headline. And because there was a bump in the track, every time the car went down the one straight, the car would go airborne. Hence the picture and the nickname, the Flying Mustang.
Because that was all 4 tires off.
All 4 tires off the ground. And it got to where they said they could see Ken Miles driving the car, and every time the car went airborne, he had a smile on his face. So normally you would think that when a car goes airborne, bad things are happening, but in this case, it was just the way it was.
Yeah.
And he went on, and there was 3 races the car participated in. It won all 3 races for that weekend.
So literally, Ken Miles, a gentleman from the Ford vs. Ferrari movie that all of us have seen, or at least I hope we've all seen at this point. He was the one driving the car in his first race when it was nicknamed the Flying Mustang, and slaughtered everything that it raced against that day. So, yeah, it's somewhat significant, isn't it?
Yeah. So this February 14th, there, literally right after that, Shelby. Next week they're going to Daytona. They're doing the 24-hour Daytona. They're running the GT40s and the Cobras down there. So this was a minor race, but
at the time, thought it was a minor race.
Yeah, at the time it was just thought it was a minor race, but it was the car that put the Mustang on the map as a sports car.
That's pretty cool. That's what's great about Jim and his knowledge is the rest of the story on these cars. You know, anybody can go back in the Shelby records and you can look at what was done to this car. You can look at the race history, things like that. There's only a handful of guys out there like Jim who know the rest of the story. He saw the car the day after it came out of Mexico, after it had been lost for almost 20 years at that point. And people had wondered and questioned what happened to it. You were there when it came out.
I was just lucky enough to be there.
And you've been involved with the car since that day. And we're extremely involved with the restoration and bringing it to this configuration.
The car was done by John Brown, thoroughbred restoration out of Oklahoma City. And time and the painstaking things to bring this car exactly to its as-raced configuration in February of 1965 was a huge task, because some of the pieces on this car were hand fabricated. They were off Cobra race cars. There was no blueprint for this car.
That bracket on the floor there in the corner looks like it might fit.
Looks
Let's
like
try
it's
it.
going to work, so we're going to try it.
Oh, it ain't quite right. We'll smack it a few times and then see if it fits.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So John did a miraculous job in duplicating a couple of things.
And he's an expert in the restoration of this era of car anyway.
Yes. He's as good as anybody in the world on 65, 66 GT350s.
And obviously with your extensive connections and knowledge, you were able to help source everything to make this right.
Was part of my deal, that I was able to make connections and chase down through people that I knew some of the pieces and parts that we needed, and just be around to help make sure that we got the car where John wanted it to be. And when the car was done, took the car out and took it to the Amelia Island concourse, which it won. And then we showed the car around the country for probably over 20,000 miles to shows and concourse ending in Pebble Beach that year. going to Pebble Beach and winning Pebble Beach is the ultimate.
So literally, your involvement from this car was from the day you saw it after it come out of Mexico as a beat-up race car in complete primer to winning Pebble Beach.
So, but I mean, I'm just a pebble on the beach and getting that done.
But you've been involved with it, and that's you know the whole story. That's the great part about it, because all these cars tell a story, and that's why we love them, is because of the story.
Yes.
And the stories are what tie all this together. And your involvement and knowledge of that stuff is what really excites me about a lot of this stuff. I've never been a big Mustang guy. But now that the more I get to know you and your knowledge, and the more you teach me, the more interested I get, and it's because of this type of stuff. All these cars tell a story, and the story is just as important, because that's the history. That's what draws us to it. The stuff you saw, the story, and you saw it on TV, you saw it in a magazine, you had a toy of it. So that's what's great about this stuff. And with Jim's knowledge, fortunately, he's willing to share that with us, and we can bring it to you. So that's the rest of the story on this car. We're going to wrap this video up. We're going to bring you another video here in a little while. We're going to do a walk around on this car, show you some of the details about it, touch on some of the stuff that Jim already talked about as far as what was so unique, so specific, that made this car what it was, back to the configuration it is right now as the day that Ken Miles raced this car and basically set in motion what we still see today when you drive past your Ford dealer and there's a brand new Shelby sitting on the showroom floor. Started right here.
Right here.
So
with this car.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Stay tuned. We're going to shoot a lot more videos while we're at Meek and Mindy this week. We're going to do some more cool stuff with Jim. He's going to share some more of his knowledge with the specifics on some of this car, plus some of his buddy John's other cars that he's got here. And so stay tuned. We're going to bring you some more cool stuff as we got time. And thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.